A warm welcome to you. My name is Rainier from Argos Finance. Today I will be explaining the back end of the Argos Credit Scoring Tool. To do this, we will use a real data set supplied by a real bank and a real report generated using the same methods the credit scoring tool uses. Let's assume the Bank of Smiles and Love has given us a spreadsheet with about 16,000 entries, each containing 13 fields. Each of those roughly 16,000 entries corresponds to a loan. The 13 fields make up the information we know about the borrower and the loan they applied for. This is what we've got: customer ID, gender, loan amount, tenure, principal payment frequency, loan disbursement date, age of account in months, 3 months average balance, 3 months number of withdrawal, 3 months number of deposit, 3 months total withdrawal, and loan repayment status. This one is especially important. Alright, so now we've got this information in front of us. What can we do with it? The answer is a lot. Let me show you. First, let's run a univariate analysis on our data. What is univariate analysis? It is the descriptive analysis of a single variable. Methods to display this are through a frequency distribution, central tendency, or the mean, median, and mode, and dispersion, or the spread of values around the central tendency measured in range and standard deviation. Here's an example. This is a frequency table of the parameter gender from our data set in relation to the parameter loan repayment status. As we can see, our univariate analysis shows us that 719 females have defaulted and 457 males. The total default number is of course 1,176 bad loans. We can also see the percentage of defaulters per gender. Let's do the same for the parameter loan amount in relation to the parameter loan repayment status. We're coupling each info field with the loan repayment status parameter because that is what we're interested in. We want to know the likelihood of default for any new borrower. Here we can see that the category 50,000 to 99,999 accounts for 532 defaults out of 4,476 loans. It is relatively the largest defaulting group. This type of analysis is done with each of the 13 variables we received from the Bank of Smiles and Love. Let's move on. We're going to run a correlation analysis on the information we are given as well. Let's keep it simple and merely look at the correlations between the continuous variables for now. A correlation analysis describes the strength and direction between two variables. By strength is meant the measure of a relationship, and by direction is meant whether this relationship is positive or negative. A positive relationship between two variables means that if we increase one variable, its related variable will increase also. A negative relationship means that if we increase one variable, its related variable will decrease. The two variables heavy rainfall and people with umbrellas, for instance, are positively correlated. The two variables heavy rainfall and people out swimming are negatively correlated. In our table here, we can see that most variables are positively correlated. An example of an exception can be seen in the relationship between 3 months number of deposit and tenure. These correlate negatively, but to a trivial extent. We can see a relatively strong relationship between 3 months average balance and loan amount. This makes sense because we would expect someone with a large loan to have a large average balance 3 months into it also. Let's proceed because we aren't done yet. Now I've processed the data a bit further using Pentaho Spoon, which is an ETL, or Extract, Transform, and Load software package. To keep a long story short, I've manipulated the data so that the month in the loan disbursement date is now its own field. I've also added a field for the number of loans a borrower of the Bank of Smiles and Love has received in the past. This field is drawn from the number of occurrences of the parameter customer ID from the information we've received from our lovely bank. Additionally, the fields loan disbursement date and customer ID have been removed from the data set. Finally, and this is important, we've divided the results into two parts, such that we now have two stacks of roughly 8,000 entries, each still containing 13 fields. One of these stacks will be used to create our predictive model, and the other will be used to test this model on its accuracy. So we've done a bunch of things with the information we were originally given, but we still haven't done the crucial part. Our goal here is to predict the loan repayment status based on the information we were handed. To do this, we've created a model that builds upon Bayes' theorem. This Bayesian model allows VECA, which is an open source collection of machine learning algorithms to apply to datasets, to compute an internal credit score. This credit score is compared to a set threshold. If this credit score is high enough, VECA will predict the loan will be paid back. This threshold can be optimized based on the relative cost of accepted bad loans, or false positives, and rejected good loans, also called false negatives. First, let's define false positives. In our story of the borrower at the Bank of Smiles and Love, a positive will mean a loan that has been approved. A true positive here means that our borrower has received the loan and will pay it back also. Conversely, a false positive then is a loan that has been dispersed but will not be paid back. In the case of a false positive, our happy bank would have lost the money that has been dispersed. In the case of a false negative, potential earnings from interest have been rejected. Now remember when I said we had roughly 16,000 entries? That is because in actuality we've received 15,960 loans. Now if we assume that the cost of a false positive is equal to the cost of a false negative, the results show 1,006 false positives and 109 false negatives. This doesn't really make sense though, because an accepted loan that will not be paid back is way costlier than rejecting a loan that would have been paid back. To illustrate this, let's assume that our bank gives out a loan of $100. The interest collected on this loan is 5%, or $5. We would need to collect interest on 20 of those loans to make up for one defaulter. That is why we can assume that the cost of an accepted bad loan is 20 times higher than the cost of a rejected good one. With this ratio applied, the results show 62 false positives and 4,932 false negatives. Using this cost threshold, the total number of false predictions is increased, but the cost of those false predictions is decreased, and the total cost as well. What does this mean? What this means is that a decent number of defaults could have been avoided, and a lot of cash could have been saved. The original dataset supplied by our bank told us there were 1,176 bad loans and 14,781 good loans. With our 20-fold cost ratio optimization and our Bayesian model, we've now accepted 62 bad loans and 9,849 good loans. Conversely, we've rejected 1,014 bad loans and 4,932 good loans. The conclusion is that only 0.6% of the loans accepted using our credit decision support system, or credit rating tool, are bad loans. The loan applications that are labeled as rejected simply require further examination. They could still be accepted, but they just might require further examination or an increased risk premium. Bear in mind that the ratio can be played with. Some banks might prefer a multiplication of 50 between accepted bad loans and rejected good ones, or 10. This is a simple, straightforward, and totally custom-built tool using open source software. If the data provided is of a decent quality, financial institutions could be working with the Argos Credit Decision Support System within 3 days. A fun fact here is that the 13 fields that were labeled age and tenure, etc. could also be called Global Flat or IXPC 60. It doesn't matter. Math only cares about relationships and variables. Thanks for watching.